Hi, this is Ryan with Forecast Consoles, and in this video I'm going to show you how easy it is to install your new workstation, whether it's sit stand or fixed height. Let's get started. I promise this was easy, and I hope that the tools required will show you how easy it will be. First things first, we're going to want a box cutter to unwrap everything, 2 Allen keys, a 4mm and a 5mm, 13mm socket wrench, preferably deep. It doesn't have to be, but it will make it easier if you have one. If you're doing a sit to stand, you'll need a screwdriver, but hopefully you have a screw gun. I would use a screw gun, and mostly that's just for attaching the sit to stand wiring components to the underside of the countertop. All right, now that we've got our tools out of the way, let's do some prep work. First step is to unwrap everything and get organized. You're going to have a countertop, a chassis, a piece of rear extrusion, a cross member, 2 legs, and a box with all of your hardware in it. Once everything's unwrapped, we can move on. We're going to be using the build upside down method. If your room doesn't have the space to allow you to fully assemble your console and then flip it over, there's nothing wrong with starting from the ground up. So step number 1, let's add our chassis. Chassis is going to drop in with the matching engraving on the bottom of the countertop. Next, we're going to add our legs. The trick with the legs is to identify which is the front and which is the back. It's very easy to do. The front has circular holes, where the back has oblong holes. And most importantly, the mending plate. This is what supports our cross member. It needs to face in. So we'll get our leg into position. We're gonna line up the front 4 holes with the 4 holes in the countertop. Do the same for the other leg. Now it's time for the cross member. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take our cross member in one hand. We're gonna lean one of our legs out. We're gonna line the eyelets up of the hardware on the mending plate, like that, and then bring our other leg in. Drop it down, and now we're in. Now it's time to attach our hardware. We're gonna use our button heads. We're gonna hand tight, and again, don't be afraid to, reposition the arm as needed. You shouldn't use a lot of force to go in. And then we're gonna finish with our Allen key. We can move on to the back. It should go in very easily. Now that we have our legs in place, we can attach our chassis. Same thing, just hand tight. And now we can hand tight our Allen key. Again, you don't need to kill these. Just nice and snug. Now we're ready to tighten down our cross member. Whether you're using a sit stand, a workstation, or a continuum line of furniture, it's gonna be the same process. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna lift up, and we're gonna start by hand tightening. Okay. So we're gonna get those hand tight, and then we're gonna use our 5mm Allen key to tighten down the easier one to access. Repeat the process for the other leg, and then we can move on to installing our sit stand hardware. The parts you're gonna need for this are going to be your pan head screws, cable bracket, cable ties, handset, right angle extension cable, control box, and power cord. The cable tie-off is going to install right where you see this X mark. And it simply has 2 through holes that match up the pre-drilled holes here. We're going to use that to take up the slack that we're going to get both on our power cord and our extension cable. So let's go ahead and install that now. I'm going to take our Phillips screws and our screw gun. You don't need a screw gun to do this. They are pre-drilled holes. You can do this with a screwdriver. Next up, we're going to install our handset. You can either install it on the right-hand side or the left-hand side. I'm going to be installing it on the right-hand side, which obviously, since we're upside down, is the left-hand side. You also have an option here in terms of depth. So, instead of screwing the screws down all the way, if you get them started, you'll notice you can slide it back to be underneath the countertop, or you can pull it forward for easier access. Personally, I like to push it as back far as possible to avoid clipping it if someone's walking past or comes up to lean on your desk. But again, it's personal preference. You can actually also, using the set screws, slightly angle it towards yourself. So I suggest you experiment with that and see what works best for you. Now we're going to move on to our control box. For our control box, you'll see there are pre-drilled holes that denote where the control box goes. They're always going to be towards the leftmost leg. The sensor upside down, it's the rightmost leg. The way you tell which direction it faces, you'll see in the face of it, one plug. That plug, you want facing the right-hand side of the desk. So we'll line those up. Get one side loosely in, and do the other. You don't need to crank these down. If you crank them too hard, they'll snap to plastic. Now for our wiring. The leg closest to the control box is going to plug in directly. Just match the set clip with the opening in the control box and plug it in. Next, we're going to install our right angle extension. We're going to have the cord facing away from the control box, and we're simply going to push it in until you hear a click. Once we connect the other leg, again, matching up the stay clip. And what we're going to do here actually is we're going to pull this to right about here, because we're going to have a cable tie, tightening that down. And we're simply just going to wrap this around to make it nice and snug. And what you'll find is that you may have to unclip this and pull that around the other side to get this to clip snug. Just like that. And you'll see you don't even really need to tie it down. It's already sitting pretty snug. Now we'll loosen the cord for our handset, and we're going to route this around this, and we're going to drop it over there. And we're going to plug this in to where it says HS for handset. And if you want to be fancy about your cable tie, you can route it under there and give yourself a little bit of slack here as a tie-off point. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to capture both of these together like that and screw them down there in the pre-drilled hole. And you don't need to crank it all the way down. You're just giving this as a pull relief. Now we can come back here, and you'll notice that there's still some slack left over. You can get really fancy, undo this clip one more time, hide that under there, and reclip it. And now you can see it's actually held in there pretty good. You can now take, once again, cable clip there, and a cable clip there to take up the rest of the slack. Works the same way on the left-hand side. And now when you flip your console right side up, you're not going to have all of your cables fall down. Last thing we're going to install is our power cord. Now our power cord simply plugs in to the side where it says AC. Eventually you're going to be routing this through this hole, which is going to dump into your chassis and plug into the integrated PDU in the chassis. And as far as picking up the slack goes, what I personally like to do is use a larger cable tie right here and take up all of my slack with the larger cable tie right here at the front in the bullseye.
Once you've finished, we're ready to turn the console right side up.
To do our extrusion, we're simply going to drop in our T-nuts. So it's helpful to get these roughly perpendicular to start, because you want them parallel with this channel, the two channels that run on the inside of the extrusion. And then we're going to start with our extrusion sort of up like this. We're going to bump it up to one edge, slot in the other edge, and we're going to get the front end first down, and then we're going to roll it backwards. And as we roll it, you'll see we're bumping into something. That's okay. We can sort of jiggle it and jiggle it until it sits down. Now, if it doesn't sit down all the way, you just lift it up a little bit and push up on the T-bolts and you'll find the problem one. And then once you find the problem one, you'll see it'll loosen up. That's why we don't crank these down yet. And you'll see now it's in the corner and it's sitting all the way down.
I'm gonna flip this over for a moment so you can easily see what I'm doing.
We're gonna take all of our T-bolts and we're gonna turn them 90 degrees so that the demarc line is now perpendicular to our channel. We're then gonna take our nut, attach our nut, and just hand tighten down. Once the nuts are hand tight, we're gonna take our 13mm socket and tighten them down. Now our extrusion is secure. Once we have our countertop and rear extrusion attached, we can add our turrets and fillers. And what you'll notice is that this is actually sitting down a little bit below the countertop. Not to worry, we have an answer. There are set screws on the underside of the filler. Simply take a Phillips screwdriver, just loosen the set screw, like so, and try again. And now you'll see it's actually sitting flush with the countertop, which is what we want. And you're done. Add your monitor arm speaker wings, and you're off to the races. Again, this has been Ryan with Forecast Consoles. I hope this video helped you assemble your new console. And I hope it was as easy as I promised. If it wasn't, or you run into any issues, give us a call, shoot us an email. We'll help you work through them. That way, you can finish your assembly and start enjoying your new console. See you in the next one.